All right, everybody, welcome to BuildFlyGo. So we've been pretty excited about this. Dirk from Tanis is here. Thank you. Tanis is helping us out with the engine heat kit. We live in Wisconsin, and it gets cold here, right?
That it does, like Minnesota.
That's right. You know, these engines are expensive, right? Let's not pretend that this is a cheap hobby. And a big part of making sure that your engine lasts is, you know, no cold starts, right? Like Lyco and Continental, they all have documents on sort of minimum temperatures for longevity of the engine. I tend to be even stricter than those docs. On our RV-10, the engine does not crank if it's under 45 degrees. I think Lyco says 20 or 30 or something like that.
They have specifics that they call out. Some are more detailed than others. The rule of thumb is 20 degrees or colder.
Yeah.
Preheat is required.
Absolutely.
Generally speaking, 40 degrees, that's a best practice. And we call all that information out inside of our operating guide. That's TNG 1000. That's all available online.
Awesome. So thank you. We really appreciate this. We're going to do an install. We're going to sort of look through the kit, see what you get when you buy the 6-cylinder kit in this case. But you have a 4-cylinder kit, you have turbine kits, you have gearbox kits, right? But for us, it's going to be a 6-cylinder kit. You've already seen the unboxing video from a few months ago, but this is, you know, what comes in the kit. We took out some of the paperwork. Tanis does not print the manual for us. Thank you. I actually really appreciate that because I tend to forget that I have a printed manual and it's out of date. And I greatly prefer the PDFs. So thanks for making PDFs available. You just go to tanis.com and then look up the part number, which in this case was, you know, it's a long part number, but if you look up the 2927.
Yeah, so when you get the kit, these documents will be in the top. And the document, when we talk about it, is the top level drawing for the kit that calls out the kit number here, and then all of the things that this document does. And one of the things it does that's primary here is tell you what's been packed in the kit, and then also the related documents that are required for the installation and where to go to get those documents.
And we just went there in the, you know, with the iPad, it's just easier to in the shop instead of printing stuff or having a laptop out. I usually do this. So 2927, and you just go to the download section, and then like each one is a PDF. And I've already pre-downloaded all of them, right? Like the first one here is that's a copy of that same sheet, but I believe one of the important ones is the kit installation. Of course, read through all of this before you do an install. You'll see us doing it, but make sure you read through all of the manuals before you do an install. There's a number of options that we're going to go through on like where to mount certain things. Today we're going to install the elements. Some of them get glued on the crankcase, and we have to just wait for that to dry. So we're going to come back at a future date when that's set and do the wiring. But let's get started. Where do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I guess the best thing to do is start with this top level drawing, and of course it calls out the installation instruction. Familiarize yourself with that. It will call out documents as you need them while you're doing the installation. So we're going to say that we've looked at those things, like the bonding instructions and things like that for the pads, because those are the first things that I put on. And on the 6-cylinder, we have 2 pads. One's going to go on the case and one's going to go on the sump. All we're trying to do with the sump element is warm the oil so that it flows. We don't want you to release any moisture into the crankcase. We want you to do that in the air while you're flying the engine. So that's the reason why we use a minimum amount of a wattage for that, and then we need to, of course, heat the case with the other one so that the oil will flow around through the case. So we'll start with those, and then the next elements we'll put in will be threaded elements, 1 per cylinder. Since this is a 6-cylinder, there's of course 6 of them in here somewhere. And we got 5 and 6, and so we'll be putting these elements in as well. These replace an intake tube bolt is where we're going to put them. You do have an option to put them in a rocker cover. I prefer the intake tube location.
And so we're replacing, you know, an aerospace bolt with one of these. I'm assuming these are, you know, stainless, heat-treated, machined.
Yep. So this is made out of aerospace fastener material. It happens to be stainless steel 17.4, and then we heat treat it so that it can replace the OEM factory bolt.
Awesome. And there's some additional wiring in here, which we will look at the one location to mount the plug that we're going to go with on the oil dipstick. And
yeah, I think we'll go ahead and install that plug.
Yeah.
We'll take it out later to wire it when we do the wiring, but Gil's gotten a bracket kit here. It's just a dowels and some hardware, but the key with the hardware here is it has an offset bracket, and then it also has a little tab for mounting the indicator light, which is part of the kit. Nice. It makes it real nice, and we'll show you how that all gets put on here later. After we get the elements going and get those pad elements curing,
okay,
we'll go on from there.
So you want to start with the pads?
Sure.
Okay.
So when we put these pads on, what we do, like you said, you've got some oil on here that coats this solvent wipe here. Mm-hmm. If you use these wipes, it doesn't require scuffing the paint at all. It will etch the surface, the gloss of the paint right off. We're going to end up putting these pads, one of them on the case. So normally the starter will get mounted here. Get the starter in here. Opposite of the starter, parallel with the case split. It's going to go on this flat surface here. You want to check and just pre-fit to see how it's going to work. And then we're going to put another element on the sump portion down here. Now we're going to position these for lead routing. So this lead, when we hook our harness up, can run down either one of these intake tubes and be secured.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
So that's where we're going to put those elements. And to prep the area for that, this stuff will etch the paint, so don't do it over the wing of an aircraft, because there's usually enough in here there to see it run out. You don't want to make a mistake and get that above some paint, because it will do that. And it dries fairly quickly, so once you open it up, start using it. Take your time and scrub it. You may get a little bit of paint depending upon the type of paint that's on there, but this is a high temp paint. Let's clean those surfaces up real nice. And I usually do a little more area than I need so that the paint has something, so the tape has some place to stick.
Sure, makes sense.
Yep. And we're gonna get as much as we can here cleaned up.
So I always worry, right, like whenever I get a kit like this and it's like, oh, you gotta glue something on, I'm always like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a thing. But it doesn't, right, like this seems fairly simple.
It's pretty simple. I mean, you might want to use gloves. They may even call for that.
Yeah.
Well,
wear gloves.
And then these pads can also be wiped off after you've done that.
Do you have both pads here? I left one over there.
Just quickly clean that off. That way any residue from manufacturing gets taken off of them as well. And if you're working on an engine that's not new, you might want to clean this off with solder solvent or something like that in preparation before you get to the point of using this. We're just simply going to...
And the solvent comes in the kit, right? Like the solvent comes in the kit, the glue comes in the kit.
Well, actually, the solvent wipe does. It doesn't have a shelf life, but our bonding sealant does have a shelf life. And this is just a Dow Corning 732 clear product.
Okay.
We have a set of bonding instructions that are called out on that top level drawing that you will have downloaded so you can reference it. And it'll tell you how to actually do what we're doing here. You can read through it. It also tells you how to remove the pad if you're doing an engine change or you have a pad that happens to go bad for whatever reason. The pads very, very rarely go bad. I have to open this. So the reason this doesn't come in the kit, it has a shelf life.
Gotcha.
And if you end up with we manufacture these kits ahead of time, so we can't put that in there. Or if a company buys a stock of them out of the country or in Alaska or something. So we don't put a lot of this on here. You essentially just need about the thickness of a safety wire, like 32 thousandths, 20 thousandths fine safety wire. We just put enough on here to cover the entire pad. Some fun stuff with this is that it actually will cure underwater. So it's the curing process is needs moisture, so humidity in the air and temperature. And so once we've got that and we know we've got all the pad covered, and we have a nice flat surface with this one, so it's going to be a real simple process. I've already pre-fitted, I know where I'm going to put it. I'm just going to hold it up here like this. I'm not even going to try and work all the air bubbles out yet. I'm just going to take and put some tape on here. And you'll see it even stays on with the silicone. And I'm just going to hold this pad in place with some tape.
Nice.
I'll even run a little dollop of this underneath the lead here to seal it. And just squish it in there. I'm just going to leave that. And we're going to take a piece of tape here, a small piece, and
just sort of hold that in place so it doesn't pull on it, yeah.
So it goes straight and it's not binding it while it's sitting here. We'll hold that up.
Nice.
And then all I do is I just take and rub this out. You could use a popsicle stick or you could use a roller. I tend to just use the edge of my thumb and kind of work from the middle out and I work the whole pad. I'm not too concerned, you know, put it just enough on so that it kind of gets extruded out. Remember, I didn't put very much. This is a nice flat surface. If it's not a super flat surface, put a little extra and then just continue to work it out. As we do that, you'll notice I didn't stick this down because I want any extra silicone to work its way out. Again, the idea is just to get it to stick on because you're trying to work out any extra silicone and work out any air bubbles if you had a rough surface. You just need to fill all the voids. If you don't do that, even the size of a pea, eventually that pad will burn out. It needs to transfer the heat through that bonding sealant.
This is the kind of thing that I that I like. Why I like doing these kinds of videos is you can read this, but it's not the same as seeing someone who's done it before do it, right? Like it's, yeah.
Go ahead and pull me off some more pieces, like 8 inches long or something, a little extra. And we'll again get this covered. Now this one, I noticed that the pad didn't fit perfectly. I may need a little extra in the center there. Make sure my edges get filled. And if you put a pad on, for example, where we've got a little bit of an edge that may not stick right away, this tape may hold it in place, but if it doesn't, don't worry about it. When you pull the tape off, just be careful not to peel the pad off.
Sure.
You can fill any voids after it's done with the silicone so that it transfers through again, so we don't have any air gaps.
And I'm guessing you've done hundreds of these at this point.
Yeah, in this process, you can complicate the hell out of it. Now, if we're doing a helicopter or something that has a gearbox that is got a lot of curves and things, we'll actually vacuum bag it. So we do it like a composite installation with it. So we know that pad's going to fit right in that area. See how nicely it's stuck up there. But see, this corner here is going to be a little bit harder to hold down, and the tape may not do it. So if it ends up coming up later, we're just going to squirt some silicone in there. I've had guys get a syringe with a needle and stuff it underneath there if they had a question on it, but I don't tend to run into that too often myself. I've installed so many of these. Before we get too far, I'll put a little dollop of silicone under this. It just kind of helps seal right where that lead goes into it. piece of this. Put some silicone on there. We're kind of got it all taped up in place, and we know that it's going to hold it. And we're just going to take some time and really get it to stick on there. Work any extra silicone we have underneath out. What's nice about doing the tape like this too is any silicone that comes out, it kind of blends around and seals the, you know, gives it a nice edge seal.
Nice. So does the 4-cylinder kit also have 2 pads?
It has 1 pad.
1 pad, okay.
And that one on the 4 cylinders just goes on the sun.
Okay.
There's enough heat and energy from that pad to get up into the case, and also from the cylinder elements. We've done a lot of thermal imaging to prove out the kits and find out exactly what kind of wattage we need for these pads.
Sure.
Now, these are designed for the mass of the engine. So any extra energy just bleeds off from the surface, you know, from all the different cooling points on the engine. And if you're in a real cold area, because these things raise the average temperature of the engine to about 50 to 60 above ambient, and then the extra energy bleeds off, so you're not going to damage anything. If you need to contain that heat, say you're operating at -10, and you'll see our best practices in the operating guide again called out, then use an insulated engine cover.
Sure.
And you'll get upwards to 40% increase. So you're going to get an additional, you know, 30, 40 degrees. So now we're looking at almost 100-degree temperature rise.
Wow. Yeah.
And there's not many places you're going to operate or want to fly.
Right. want to is the...
You're going to get that engine up to 20 degrees without any problem.
Are the pads the same?
In the 6-cylinder kit that we're installing here, they are the identical pads.
Good. Okay.
They're a whole 80 watts each. That's not a lot.
Gotcha.
This kit is 460 watts in total, so it's like 4 amps is all it is, 4.1 amps. That is on.
All right.
Pretty simple process.
Well, that's demystified, right? Like it's
demystified.
It's one of those.
There you go.
I would have analysis paralysis for the first like 3 hours staring at this. It's like, should I have it like this? Should I have it like this?
Well, you've got 8 hours to stare at it. We want an 8-hour cure.
That's right.
And when you pull this off, there may be some spots because this tape does seal out some air. Again, it's humidity and temperature that cures it, but it does need some exposure to those things, and those are in the air. So you may have some spots where some silicone isn't cured. Just once it's off, let it cure for another hour or two, you know, seal any edges, maybe make sure this lead's secured well, and then continue doing whatever else you need to do. But within an hour after peeling that off, and sometimes I even do it right away, you can then apply power to it. But any kit that you do install, before applying power, we use an ohm meter to make sure that we've got an ohm reading, and that ohm reading is called out in those installation instructions. Individual elements are also called out in there. So if you want to find out, is this element good, those specs are all in that installation guide.
Oh, excellent. That's good troubleshooting. Yeah. So we'll leave those on overnight, and then I'll peel them off tomorrow morning-ish, and it'll finish curing.
Yep, if you leave them on for an extra day, that's fine too.
Okay.
Now the important thing with this, once you pull this out, got a really good way to help you, is we're not going to use any of the stock stuff that came out. We don't want a washer or a spacer on there. So the elements that we have are certified to go in without that. And you'll notice that the length of this, with these stacked up, is exactly the same length. Look at that. And without these on here, of course, these are 1.25 inches long, where these are, you can see the difference. 1 1/8 where these are, yep, 1 1/8 inches. So it's designed for that. So we're not going to use those, and we're just going to install this into this location. Normally they just thread in with your finger. Some of the Continentals, like if you're on a 6-cylinder Continental, they have 4, and that the flange itself doesn't float. It's secured to the intake tube. You may have to loosen 1 or 2 other ones just to get this thing to kind of walk around so that that'll screw in by hand.
Sure.
It's very rare that I have to do that, but you know, if you were to screw it in and it didn't screw in easily for a couple threads, at least if you get any binding at all, stop, pull it out. If in doubt, take it out, because this is aluminum and this is stainless steel, and we don't want to gall any threads. In our instructions, again, there is an instruction for putting these in that are very specific, not to use spacers and washers if at all possible. There are locations that we do call those out, spacers, and those are in rocker cover locations should you decide to replace it there. But I prefer the intake tube on all the installations if I can do it. I even do that on the 550 engines or Continentals that have the split rocker covers with the intake tube on the top. I pull one of the studs out and I replace it.
Oh.
So if you have questions on pulling that stud, I can tell you how to do it. I've never broken one. They come out nice and easy by double nutting them, but there are some tricks which are handy.
Perfect.
So that's going to go in there. We tighten it up.
I like I'm sure you've thought of all of this, right, which is why you picked this, but I really like the idea of, right, like you can support the wire with the intake, and it's not a wire that's coming out at 90 degrees here that you have to then...
Exactly. And I picked this one, even though some guys say, well, I want to put it inside here where there's more meat in the head, you know, the heat is inside. These are easy to inspect. They're easy to check when they're on the outside like that. So...
And this is 100 inch-pounds?
100 inch-pounds. We're just going to take and torque this thing until it clicks. There we go. There it went, right there. And I wanted to make sure that we're, you know, seated up here real nice and we aren't extending it out. So it's that 85 to 100 inch-pound, 110 inch-pounds, and that's it.
That's right in the middle of the range. Perfect.
That's it. And then we have in the kit some cable ties, and if you happen to have a cutter for these, so all I do with this is I secure that lead around the intake tube. Nice and simple. Yep, and I have a pair of side cutters. And these are nice because they're flush, they're not beveled, so you can cut this off. If you don't cut these off nice and flush, some guy may stick his hand in the engine and slice himself open on that.
It's impressive how slicey zip ties are, right?
So that's nice and smooth. See how it cut off? It happened to cut while I was also, you know, torquing it or pulling it tight, but it's on there nice and tight.
Excellent.
And then these will eventually lead and connect to our harness when it follows the ignition leads around for installation.
Okay. And we will get the rest of them done, but let's take a peek at the top, right? Like the plug next.
Perfect.
All right, there's the bracket kit.
Yeah, and the reason I just wanted to show a picture of what's in it, how simple it is, and then of course there's download information here for that. And there you go. It's a simple process.
And that's what it's going to look like.
Once it's installed, we got a bracket for the indicator light, and then we've got that offset bracket. That's the key things. Even if you wanted to copy this and use your own stuff, it's all called out in here, the parts.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, let's see what this is roughly going to look like over there, and then we can install it.
Perfect. You want me to do that, or you want to show?
Well, why don't I do it, and you tell me if I'm doing this wrong.
I'll give you the stuff. How's that?
Perfect.
Perfect.
So, small one on the bottom, yeah?
Yep. I'm going to face them toward you so it's easier to...
Like this?
Like that. Yep.
Okay.
Put a -24 around the top, and then 2 24s will go around the plug in the same manner.
Just on the top there. Okay. Yep. And then that's going to go...
Put these here and...
Okay. And then so they get attached to the top one together, and then the spacer goes on the bottom. Okay. So you'll watch us struggle with the Del clamps a little bit. I don't think I've found an Del clamp yet that I haven't struggled with. Someone will invent the struggle-free Del clamp, and
it's usually an individual. that's good at doing it. I have seen some guys that are amazing.
Okay.
So there's the little offset bracket that goes on the bottom set.
And all good.
Yep.
Okay.
Now we get held in there.
Let's get some hardware.
So part of putting the bracket kit on the top of this Lycoming, that 3300 bracket kit that uses the Adels, it comes with a little light tab for mounting the indicator light, which is part of the kit. I've already bent this at a 90 degrees. You don't want to bend it too far out. You know, want it nice and tucked tight to it if you can. You put it on with the hardware that's supplied. I usually take and put a little bit of our good old bonding sealant that you put the pads on with to keep the threads there after you tighten the nut. And it's important, this comes with it, and it talks about it in the instructions. Look at that, support shrink. What that does is it helps support this transitional area, and it helps hold that nut, keep it on. So that's all prepared, and that's nice and hot. Then we're going to have to put this connector on here. And what I do with that is, polarity is not important on this. It's a little LED. Some LEDs it is. It's not for this one.
Oh, interesting.
So I was hoping to have a little pocket screwdriver. But we're going to just pull the seal out of here. So we pull the seal out of the back.
Slide it on then.
Yeah, I do this so that when I'm pushing these through, that I don't work this wire because it's only 22 gauge. You'll end up breaking the darn wire. So you put it in there like that. Polarity doesn't matter, so we're just going to put it in the back, and you'll hear it click into place.
Mm-hmm. And this is just it's a Deutsche connector, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there we go.
What?
One way or the other, we'll get them to click into place.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one in place. And there's the other one.
All right.
So I pull on them just to make sure that they're clicked in place, and then pull on this. And then you just work this seal back in to the cavity in the back. This seems to be a mystery for people periodically. These may not reach. If they don't, I'll use those hemostats. One side of this is flat and one side is not. It's tapered. We want the flat side to the outside of this. If you look down inside of there, there's some little tabs.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, we don't have a light that'll show. So we're just going to put this to the outside, and we're going to drop it down in there. If you don't put it to the outside, it may catch the little fingers and go on the wrong side, and it'll drop down in there. And then you just push it, and it clicks in place. And you double check. If you're having a problem, it means that the little fingers that retain those contacts, that wedge got on the wrong side between the contact and the wedge, instead of between the wedge and the outside of the connector bottom. So that's all set to plug in. We're going to go back to putting that bracket kit on. This is going to need to be slid down before we tighten the Adels, or you're not going to be able to position it. Tolerance is just too tight.
Okay, so we installed the Adel clamp bracket system for the plug. Obviously the wires aren't in place, but we wanted to show sort of this one option of where to mount the plug. We had the usual Adel clamp struggle.
We got it done.
Yeah, but it's there, and I like the angle, right? Like it's nice that it's, you know, and it's really pretty sturdy. The one on my RV-9 sort of flops around. I just have it attached with zip ties, and this is a great idea. I'm gonna borrow this idea.
Yeah, and we do call out in our kits to hard mount this. You know, as part of the process. The FAA actually knows the kits we use. When we created the operating guide, for example, originally it was a flight manual supplement. We went to approve that years ago, and the guy goes, "Hey, I know your product, but it's not always operated by pilots, is it? You know, if it's on a helicopter, or say it's on a Q400, you're going to have ground crew plugging in. So why don't we write an operating guide?"
Nice.
So the advantage with this, and it's called out in all our documentation, is that plug is not flopping around. It's not going to break a wire. It's not going to be floating around and get caught on a fuel control.
Yeah,
or any other horrible thing you could think of.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to attach it on the 9 as well.
So the nice thing too is this makes the kit more usable. And if it's easy to use, people tend to use it.
It's a lot, right. This, like with it being fixed like this, it's a lot easier to plug in, right?
Exactly.
Like I struggle on the 9 because it's like I have to stick 2 hands inside that oil door opening to get
And
it.
then with the light here, and this bracket comes with this little Adele kit. We call it a bracket kit. And that standoff that's down there that allows this angle to aim toward the oil door. But these things are in here. This indicator light is actually wired to the circuit protection.
Okay.
It's a little fuse block in line on the load side. So if a fuse were to blow, this light won't come on. Or your extension cord wasn't plugged in, this light isn't going to come on.
Yeah, so okay. So it's not telling you that there's power at the plug, it's telling you that there's power on the load side.
Yes.
That's great. Because
to the system. Exactly. And it's telling you there's power to the plug.
Of course, as well. Yes. Nice. And the other option that I think we're going to show later is on the front, on the baffle, there's a flush mount kit for the plug as well. Either one is good. We figured this is an easy one to show, and then we'd do the other one as well.
Yeah, if you're curious about more plug options, go into that installation guide. There's probably 30 to 40 different examples of plug options for mounting on different aircraft and different engines. And those are all available through us. And you can create your own if you want.
Yeah. All right, so we have all 6 elements in for the threaded ones. We have the 2 pads on and they're curing.
Yep.
We have sort of the first option for putting the plug in for us to get an idea of one option of where that's going to go. We're waiting for this to cure. We're going to let it go 24 hours and then we'll come back to it. You have things to do this week, so...
And in the meantime, while this is curing, we can get the baffling put on.
That's right. Get the baffling on in the next week or 2.
Perfect.